Good morning. As of right now, we do not have a quorum, so we'll give a few minutes to see if somebody shows up. 8. That's with Andy. 3. Oh, I got all that. Make it look official. Same. Good morning. Call this Wednesday morning, February 13th meeting of the Criminal Justice Committee to order. Start with roll call, please.
Mr. Hess,
Present.
Mr. Byrne, Mr. Lear, Mr. Legess, Mr. Olthoff, Mr. Snipes, Miss Dunbar,
Snipes.
Mr. Ritter, Miss Parker, Mr. Fairfield, Mr. Carrico, Mr. Eckhoff. Okay.
Present.
Mr. Smith, Ms. DiColo, Mr. Wheeler. We have a quorum.
Okay. I'd like to get a motion to amend the agenda. The coroner has a meeting in Chicago and move him up first. Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Fairfield. All in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Good morning, sir. Bring your mic down. In your package you have a copy of the coroner's report and a copy of the monthly receipts. Take a motion to combine those and approve them. Mr. Carrico, second by Mr. Eckhoff. Comments on your report, sir.
Thank you. We're still holding ourselves. As you can see, I'm looking at this particular report here. This is we had 5 autopsies in December and 4 in January. We've kind of kept that down when we were averaging 10 last year and the year before that. So other than that, it's very normal type of deal. So I don't see anything in it. We do as far as overdoses right now. We're holding on them too. We have 2 as of right now and 3 pending. Definitely probably going to be overdoses. So you'll probably have a total of 5 here pretty quickly. So. Other than that, I think any questions on that.
Questions on that report? Moving on to the monthly receipts.
Those are kind of self-explanatory.
Any questions on the monthly receipt? We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you for letting me go here this morning earlier. I'm going to do in Chicago this morning to be able to talk my last shot at on marijuana there. I'm talking in front of the Senate sponsoring the bill on marijuana and also the representative that's there. I'm going with the Pledge of Life out of Kankakee County to be able to speak the last time on this before they go and vote. Most people say it's done and it's over with there. Just to show you that our statistics are still up high on marijuana on cases that are coming through Kankakee. You read in the paper last night, the last accident on I-57, there was a big bag of marijuana in the front seat of that particular car when the semi hit it. So I think it's going to be a problem, and I'm still fighting it all the way to the end if possible. I talked to Toy Hutchison on it. She's a co-sponsor of it, and she's for that, but I made her open her eyes a little bit what's going on in our county here, not just the Chicagoland area or somewhere like that. With our 113,000, our statistics are way up and coming down. We're still continuing teaching. We just talked to a church over there on Court and Wall, 75 people there. We're able to talk about the Narcan, talked to a bunch of people that used to be addicts, and learned a lot. It all starts with the marijuana. It's a gateway product, and it's going to come to our area. And I'm concerned about the kids, the young kids, the gummy bears and the brownies that are being made out of this stuff. I'll talk on all this morning. I remember preaching to try to get the Narcan and say that you're never going to get a grant, and we got a grant. So I want to give it all my best of my ability to speak on this particular problem that's going to hit Kankakee County. I can guarantee you that.
Snipes.
I would say take our blessings with you, take our ad campaign with you. Don't smoke and drive in Chicago. So tell the senator we vote against it as far as that's concerned. And I'm sure it has a little weight up in there to do what you do.
Bless you.
Any other questions, comments? Drive safe.
Thank you. All right.
I skipped over the public comment section, but is there any public comment at this time? Moving on to the approval of the minutes. You received a copy of the minutes. Take a motion to approve. Mr. Snipes, second by Mr. Lejeff. All in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Discussion regarding the Second Amendment support resolution. Who would like to talk on that first? Mr. Smith.
We've been taking a look at the other counties across the state of Illinois that have done this. Somewhere 60 to 63 have already produced a resolution. Talked with our board chairman and talked about a couple ways to moderate some of the rhetoric that the other counties have been putting into theirs. Effingham County kind of being the most direct, vocal, hard-line thing.
Hank?
But at any rate, it is what it is here. We are going to get our group together on the 28th. Kelly tells us that we can use the second floor conference room. Is that what it's called? And anybody else who's interested in working with us and getting our rough draft finished out so we can get it in the cycle that we were looking at, we would, give Colton or I a call, Andy, and we'll go from there. Basically, what we've done is, if you've looked at the resolutions from all the other counties that are out there, they span several years. We're concentrating purely on what the 101st General Assembly is doing and some of the effects that it would have here on our local residents. Both Ray and I, being retired law enforcement, it kind of amazed me when I read in there some of the things that we would now become felons if this actually passes, some of the resolutions. But we're putting together a little point paper, current proposed bills through the House and the Senate, and the impact it would have on us. And then, as I think Mr. Kinzinger asked me a couple of weeks ago, have we actually read all of these bills? And I've got a email attachment that anybody that wants it, I will forward it out to you. And yes, I've actually went through and highlighted line by line on these things. I become concerned when it says I'm going to become a class 1 to a class 4 felon. So just purely for something that I may or may not have in my gun safe.
Right.
Highlight that may not. But these are kind of the process that we're following. Again, the 28th of this month, 4 o'clock, second floor. Anybody that wants to help review this, and so we can get it through the process, we'd appreciate your assistance.
Question, if we get too many people there, we're in violation of the Open Meeting Act, right?
Right.
Mr. Wheeler?
Even though this isn't an official subcommittee, it's a work group, you still can't have a majority of a quorum of like this size committee or of the full board. So you have to kind of watch those numbers. That doesn't mean people can't wait outside and a couple leave and a couple come in. But you have to watch that number. So I would definitely stick below 8.
Mr. Smith, go ahead. Continue.
Andy is correct, and we've talked about that. We're only looking for 2, maybe 3 more voices, and frankly, we'd like to have this bipartisan. So, if some other folks would want to pop in and give us their comments on it, we'd appreciate it.
Mr. Snipes?
Good morning. Now, let me understand. We are supporting a constitutional amendment that's already a constitutional amendment. And what we're saying is that we don't want to erode certain rights of the Second Amendment, which would appear to be, if there was a constitutional challenge, illegal if we had a constitution already in place. So who gives the overall authority to arrest the rights of American citizens if the Constitution is already in place? And would it not be, I guess, they should have to walk the waters of caution as to how they frame that to make now I guess what's legal, illegal, that puts you average citizen in the class 1 to 4 felony, depending on what you have or what you don't have, or whatever. That organization could then deem it unconstitutional, and then there will be court battles, wouldn't it be?
Legislature, primarily led by the Chicago coalitions, who are very anti-Second Amendment. And there will be court challenges. This symbolic resolution, and we've actually, what we're calling it here so far, I know it's on the agenda, is the Second Amendment support resolution. We're calling it the advocacy resolution, Second Amendment advocacy, because we are advocating for what is in the U.S. Constitution, the Second Amendment primarily, but if you read the Fourth and the Eighth Amendment, it also applies in there for the unlawful taking of your rights and or equipment, and that's kind of what we'll explain in the point paper as we go through this. But our legislatures, and whatever rationale or reason they're trying to follow, and a lot of it deals with taxes. One of the newest ones that was just proposed 2 days ago that are submitted is every firearms or ammunition purchase, the way I'm reading it, is going to have a 3.75% surcharge added to it. It's money. Now, as a sports person, general supporting advocate for that, it's just a money grab. It also, if I can tax you out of doing anything, I've won. You know, if I'm the opposition. The symbolic side of our resolution, as the other 50% plus counties have done, is to remind our legislators who they work for. And that's purely what we're trying to do. This will have no impact on Sheriff Downey as far as he or the deputies out there doing their jobs. State's attorney has indicated that it's not going to have any issue on his. The strongest one, as I said, is Effingham County, and theirs actually reads, no county assets shall be used to erode the Second Amendment rights of Effingham County citizens. Well, their sheriff and state's attorney have both said, you know, on a case-by-case basis, we're going to look at it. We'll check with the Sheriff's Association, we'll check with the Attorney General, and we'll proceed from there. So the concern that some people have said it's going to hog-tie the sheriff, no, it does not. This just says from a Second Amendment support stance that we want our legislators to realize that we're just not going to roll over and take it.
If it is user-friendly language, I would like to see the draft at some point, and then go from there. If county board members show up, it's not always considered a violation of the Open Meetings Act, just that you can't discuss, have any discussion as far as that's concerned. Sit in the audience, but you cannot discuss as far as that's concerned. Even though you might have 1 or 2 individuals that might be leading it, it's not that violation if you are not a participant other than just an observationist.
Okay. I brought this up at the exec to bring this here, and my thought was to get the sheriff's viewpoint and the state's attorney's viewpoint on this issue. Sheriff, do you have anything that you want to discuss?
Mr. Smith is and Mr. Eckhoff are continuing to, I think it still requires a lot of discussion. I think changing the name, or at least the advocacy part of it, is a good thing. Housing for ICE, as we do, I get a little scared of the term sanctuary. So, I mean, those are good things. And again, as a law enforcement person, I am certainly pro Second Amendment, and this governor has made it clear what he wants to do. And the 50 plus states that have already approved this are telling him that we don't want him to take our guns. However, when only 3 counties elected him governor of our state, 50 counties isn't going to matter a whole hell of a lot. So I think it's important that everybody in Illinois move forward with something.
Thank you. Any other comments? So the subcommittee will meet on the 28th at 4 o'clock. That'd be your first meeting then, right? Okay. Thank you. Ms. Cianci. As I don't see the chief judge, so I sort of skipped over him. In your package, you have a copy of Sandy's report. Take a motion to approve. Mr. Fairfield, second by Mr. Kulo. Comments on your report, Sandy?
Good morning. No general comments about the regular monthly report of distribution. If anyone has any questions about that.
Questions? Harrison Harris.
So for the Harrison Harris report, we can see that we, the open inventory, we turned over 560 cases so far this year, and to the tune of $271,000. That's what we're looking for at this point. On the next page, the recoveries, we brought in $70,879 in January just through the Harrison Harris and Illinois local debt recovery program. The debt recovery program really probably hasn't contributed any money yet. I loaded the file last week or the week before to them from Harris, so once people start doing their taxes, that's when the Illinois taxes will be retained by us if they owe us any money. So are there any questions about that, especially for the new people? Okay. The next report is the state's attorney collection call report. So what they do is they work with some of the people and get agreements that they will pay. And so in January that was almost $6,000. And I look for that to perk up a little more. Like I said, through the tax season, people are very willing and voluntarily come in and pay lots and lots of cases off. So, you know, I look for February, March, and April. As you can see in the past, those have increased over time in all of my reports. So you'll see that in the next couple of months.
Questions? Comments on all the reports? Mr. Snipes.
Point of clarification. Under your Harrison Harris, you collected $6,900,000, almost $7 million. Of that $7 million, do they get a percentage, or is this what the county realizes?
This is what the county realizes.
Oh, okay.
This is not their part.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
And the bulk of that has been within the last 4 years, or just has been
From
state?
2011. Ever since we've had Harrison Harris as our third-party collection agency, this is what we've collected. This is the history of what we've collected with their efforts, joining our efforts.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And then really, when you go back to the first report that we have, the end of period listing, that money all is dispersed through all of those funds. So, like, you know, the additional money that was collected in January, the $70,000, and the 5,000, almost 6,000 with the state's attorney court call, that is all what goes through this report. You know, it all gets
Incorporated into that report.
correct. So,
Okay.
and then all of these funds, that's where that money goes.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So it generates back into your system.
Correct.
Oh.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Okay, so for the computerization update, we're still bouncing back and forth between Tyler and Courtview as to getting the integration going for the civil. We're a year behind, and I think the last time it was in Tyler's court, there was something that's supposed to be happened. The ball was in their court. They are supposed to be working on the next step, and we're going into testing soon, hopefully this week or next week. So that's been, you know, a slow process, but they're working on it. So once we get integrated, I hope to see some. It'll be a big turnover as far as trying to train everybody how to do the new thing, not including my staff, but also all of the public that uses the e-filing. You know, they all have a million questions, and you know, it's challenging on both sides of the equation. So once we get that going, probably I would say 3 or 4 months after that, I think then we'll be on a good path with the e-filing. The criminal mandate, or they're opening up the criminal e-filing to be, you know, if you want to do it, permissive, that's the word. And there's many along in the state of Illinois, many of the clerks don't think that we're ready for that yet, because there's still a lot of little things that need to be addressed, especially with confidential documents and confidential cases, things like that. So we're all working together, so we'll see how that goes. And then there was one other thing. Oh, and I want to thank you too for, I finally have hired my 2 additional staff members, so now the training begins with that. I have 5-minute clerks that are being trained totally starting today, so that's kind of a big deal. Out of 10 courtrooms, that's a lot. And then I have 1 additional person that I've hired for the main office to help with the general, you know, business of the day. So hopefully in a few months we'll see the fruits of all of that coming together.
Good. Questions for Sandy? Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Anita brought something up. I had 2 questions. The child advocacy fee, is that going away?
Well, that's something that there's the training next Friday, a week from Friday, down in Springfield, and I will be able to find out more about what we need to do and then what we need to do as a county, because there's county resolutions that we are going to need to address along with that. I'm finding that a lot of these types of funds may go away. The Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board is very unhappy because they're going to be losing a lot of money. So I don't know, Sheriff, if you know much about that too. So it's all over. All of our associations are trying to work together on this. But one of the clerks, I had an email from him the other day, and he said he doesn't know how counties are going to be able to do business once all of this legislation falls together, because what's going to happen is the judges are going to say $100, and all these buckets aren't going to get filled, you know, like they have been. So that's what I'm gonna, you know, when I go to the training next week, I'll know more. And then what I was wanting to do is get the committee. I might set a meeting with like the judge and the state's attorneys and a few other people, so that we can begin to address some of our issues coming up.
Sheriff.
Yeah, we actually dealt with this issue at the Sheriff's Conference the first weekend in February, and obviously it's been something that we all have been aware of. And what we were told is a lot of this money is not going to specific funds, but going directly to the general fund, which means county boards are then going to be responsible for making sure it goes to where it needs to go. So that's something that we need to pay attention to. But a lot of that money is slated to go to the general fund instead of all these other funds that are out there.
But then also they're going to be cutting back some of them. So like our county, in the Clerk of the Court Act, we can assess a range of fees, like for the automation fund, the document storage, things like that. So I believe what's going to happen is the ones that are collecting the most, the highest level, are going to be pulled back some, and then some of the counties that aren't assessing that amount are, it's going to be more uniform across the state. And so for some of us, it's going to reduce some of the money that we're going to bring in, and for other counties, it might increase. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all falls together. And it's all going to be effective July 1st.
Yeah, I appreciate the time to react. Wow. The other question I had was, and it may be too early, your associations and maybe the Sheriff's Association talked about this, but I think it's Senate Bill 2564, which is the change potentially in the Bail Reform Act, where counties outside of Cook can vote by resolution at the county board to not comply with that. You may remember a lot of our bond fees, because they're not bonding out, have gone substantially down.
Correct.
And are you hearing if that has legs, or it's been submitted, I believe? What are your associations thinking on that?
Mine hasn't talked much about that. We're just too busy worrying about getting this other together, because for us, we're going to have to, reform our whole court view system, to make sure that all of the automated, we collect the money, it's all automated. So it's going to be a big change for us.
Sheriff?
Our association doesn't think it's going to pass.
And because I don't know what the judges would do too, I mean, I don't know what they're thinking.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Sandy? Thank you.
Thank you.
In your package, you have a copy of the state's attorney's grand jury report and the grand jury statistics report for January 2019. Mr. Rowe is not here, but I'll take a motion to approve. Ms. Dunbar, second by Mr. Legess. All in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Also in the package, you have a copy of the public defender's report. Take a motion to approve that. Mr. Eckhoff, second by Mr. Snipes. Any questions on that one? All in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Mr. Latham.
Good morning.
In your package, you have a copy of the monthly report from the probation department. Take a motion to approve. Mr. Fairfield, second by Ms. Dunbar. Comments on your report, Tim?
No, it's pretty straightforward. You can see we had exactly 500 successful field contacts and just over 1,700 office contacts, for a total of 2,200 in January. Did 242 drug tests. We currently have 7 juveniles in custody, with 5 being held at River Valley and 2 being held here. And I haven't gotten an email yet about the last 2 nights, so that's the number I have for that. So that's it.
Questions or comments? We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
I don't have much this month. Like I said, we did 242 drug tests in January. We're working with a local treatment provider to expand our weekend drug testing. That should be in place by next week. So just to add to that amount, and then we won't have that gap of, well, we do something now, but we close that gap of over a weekend or a long weekend of not testing, especially with some of the drugs. The window of detection is very small, so to go 3 or 4 days is a problem, so we're fixing that now. And again, I know we touched on some legislation. We're watching that too. I think the deadline is the 15th, I think, for that. For new bills, we're watching they're wanting the movement towards raising the age of minors to 21, 24-hour detention hearings. So daily detention hearings, which obviously is an issue. We house the kids in Kankakee at Joliet. The Iroquois kids go to Danville. And so to get those back and forth every day is going to be a huge issue on weekends. So I'll keep you posted on anything we hear. Obviously, we're watching the Bail Reform Act and how that, obviously, that's impacting my collection rate and my fees. I don't know where the bottom is for that, but we'll watch it. And that's why we did hire a new person. We'll start the 18th. That's filling a vacancy we had, and then we have one more we're filling, which is for a grant position that we got. So we're in the process of doing that. Hopefully within the next few weeks we'll have that, and we'll stay. Okay.
Received any more payments?
Not since August, through August.
Not since Finance Committee last month?
Correct.
Okay. Any questions or comments for Mr. Latham? Thank you, sir. Sheriff. Everybody should have received a copy of the Sheriff's monthly report by email, and you have one in your packet. Take a motion to approve. Mr. Carrico, second by Mr. Fairfield. Comments, sir?
Good morning.
Good morning.
So, before we start, we have repaired 4 microphones in here. I don't think we repaired Mr. Smith's, but I'm not sure which 4 got repaired. But one of the things that's happening with these microphones is that they're getting tugged, and as they get tugged, the bottom wires fray, which causes some problems. So I would ask that there's a metal bar that's in the middle of your microphone. Pull it down by that, nice and slow. We may delay the fraying of our wires, and hopefully they're about $280 a piece to repair. So if we can avoid that,
Kevin just shaking his
not
head
placing
back here.
blame on anyone in here, because this room is used obviously more than just this meeting. So, but that would still prevent us from having to replace some. So, everybody get the report. A couple things of note, and I know that some people would have you believe that we're making money on the backs of immigrants, and I'm just here to tell you that in 2017, in December of 2017, we had 152 United States Marshals with all 3 jurisdictions: the Northern District of Illinois, the Central District of Illinois, and the Northern District of Indiana. In December of 2018, we had 219 U.S. Marshals between the 3 jurisdictions. So obviously that difference, accompanied with the difference in January of 143 U.S. Marshals compared to 219 in 2018, is the reason that if you look at that number that is bolded on the right-hand side of $301,000, that is the amount of money that has increased from last year. And while I will continue to remind you that we're not going to increase by those numbers every month, because as we went through 2018, our numbers did jump. So I don't look for those numbers to decline. But that $301,000 buffer, if you will, puts us, if you factor that out to what we brought in this year, puts us at about $10.8 million. All numbers staying similar to what we had last year. So hopefully that's a good sign for everybody. Questions on that? A couple things on one important thing on the transport, and Tom mentioned it about, the law changing. That will certainly have an impact on us as we go back and forth to River Valley. Not quite sure how often, but last year we'd made 305 trips. So if you do the math, that's about an average of 1 a day, a little under 1 a day. It's a little bit less right now, but we'll see where that ends up. Our DOC commitments I mentioned last month about the numbers being released. And in 2018 we had 835 released. Right now we're averaging slightly over 100 released per month. And again, that number could be well into the 1,200 number of those coming back from Illinois Department of Corrections. And we know with recidivism and things like that, that will keep us unfortunately busy. Question on the corrections side. On the sworn side, we continue our traffic enforcement. The number of citations and warnings are a little bit better than they were this time last year, and we'll stay on that as far as identifying bad areas for traffic enforcement, trying to eliminate reckless driving and bad driving and accidents that cause fatalities. Everything else has remained pretty consistent. We do have a number of warrants that we served in the last 2 months, up significantly from last year. And just a side note for those that follow Warrant Wednesday, whether you do or not, the success rate of Warrant Wednesday is about 80%. Of those individuals that are put out on Wednesdays, about 80% of those are ultimately turn themselves in, or we receive tips via our Facebook page, or they call Crime Stoppers, and 80% of those end up in custody in some way, shape, or form. There have been incidents where individuals will have their attorney go to court and get their warrant quashed, which in some cases that's legitimate because they may be in drug treatment, which obviously is a benefit for them. However, the ones who go get their warrant quashed just because the attorney requested it still continues to be a burden on law enforcement and the whole entire justice system when we have to redo paperwork every time these people don't show up to court. So just a heads up on that. Questions on that? Underneath the revenue section, as I said, our numbers are up, so obviously that's a good thing. We are averaging slightly over $1 million a month coming in, and hopefully those will remain consistent. Our numbers in February thus far have been actually higher than anticipated, so we'll continue to monitor that. I'm sure that the $1 million question, if you will, is have the feds paid yet? And the answer at this point is not yet, but I know they were working through some things, and they supposedly have something that's going to get officially done Friday. And when that happens, I would anticipate that we get paid rather quickly. They are normally fairly quick with their payments, within 30 days, so with interest. Questions on that? The bail reform that Mr. Wheeler asked about, one of the things that we did previous to the bail reform anyway was that we monitored those that were in custody for what would have amounted to them serving more time waiting trial than they would have received had they been sentenced. So we work closely with the state's attorney's office and notifying them of their status prior to the bail reform. Obviously, the bail reform changed all that. So we were the bail reform. It affected the bonds that we collect because now people are getting out a little quicker. But we did monitor those individuals who maybe were here for a nonviolent crime with a $500 bond that they were here for 2 months, and at that point, so we work closely with the state's attorney's office on that, and so whether that changes or not, obviously it'll still have an effect on us, but we do monitor that and make sure that we're not holding people in jail longer than we would if they were would have been sentenced to something anyway. So And the last thing I have, well, I have two things actually, three things. Criminal justice reform, some of you have seen this on a national level. And while certainly there are areas that need to be reformed, I think the one thing that everybody kind of forgets about sometimes is that personal accountability. And everybody wants criminal justice reform to take away from the personal responsibility that these people have. And that's probably the most aggravating part. Everybody thinks they did something wrong, so we should give them a break because they did something wrong, instead of them stepping up saying, "Hey, I messed up." That's the most aggravating part for me is when it comes to criminal justice reform, is, you know, all of a sudden now, and all that does is give them another opportunity to violate our laws and again cost money to the taxpayers. So this is our 2018 annual report. I told you that I would have it, and I do. However, we are going through it for accuracy at this point. I was in Washington, D.C. for the last 4 days and didn't get a chance to review everything, so we are reviewing it, making sure that it's accurate before we make it available. But we will certainly make it available to you guys. It is too big to email, so unfortunately we can't email it, so we'll send you guys an email when it's ready, and if you want a copy, we will make some arrangements to get you a copy. And lastly, I was in Washington, D.C. the last 4 days. It was kind of interesting. Sometimes it's good to get out there and realize how lucky we have it here in dealing with government, because that place out there is a zoo. And obviously the biggest thing going was the government shutdown. I was at the National Sheriff's Association conference, and there is a lot of problems for law enforcement that are coming down the pike. Some of it due to criminal justice reform, some of it due to immigration, and so, you know, we dealt with those a little bit, made some good contacts out there. I actually met with the acting director of ICE, who's actually from DuPage originally, so he is a very nice guy. He is well aware of what we are doing in Kankakee, which was a positive, and hopefully that relationship can turn into some opportunities for us later down the road. So,
Questions or comments? Mr. Legess?
That's perfect.
Sounds like my knees getting out of bed in the morning. I knew that sound somewhere. Mike, just could you, if you can, address, there's a lot of rumors going around. People are asking me about Dwight, you know, the situation with the facility there. Could you kind of just give us an overview of how that affects us and you know, what's going on?
Yeah, Dwight, you know, there's some issues with Dwight that I don't believe will affect us, but that's probably 4 or 5 years down the road. In fact, we talked about, I did talk to, when I talked to the director of ICE, we talked about Dwight and what they're trying to do, and ICE is trying to establish a facility in the central or in the Midwest. Doesn't have to necessarily be in Illinois, but a lot of, and what's happening is a lot of these private entities are out there. The particular company that's in Dwight or meeting with Dwight is a company called ICA, Immigration Center of America, and they have a facility in Farmville, Virginia, right now, and they are a private facility that, and one of the things that the private facilities do is they, from a business standpoint, they hire former ICE employees, and so they feel like that kind of gives them some sort of in with ICE in general. The majority of people that I have talked to in both legislatures, whether it's in the state or nationally, are opposed to private facilities. But that doesn't mean they don't exist. And if what's in the articles are accurate from the paper, and I do mean the paper, because that's what it's called in Dwight, it says that they're going to house non-criminal immigrants, which, as you guys as county board members hear every month, that's exactly what a lot of people don't want. So I can tell you that based on the conversations I had this weekend, and this information is direct from ICE. It's not some made-up number that sometimes our local paper likes to print. But, you know, 80 to 90% of the individuals that they are arresting are criminals. And not criminals for just crossing the border. Criminals because they're felons. Criminals because they've already been deported and they came back. So, you know, there's a lot of talk about and the accuracy from what's happening in Washington, D.C. to the local jurisdictions is just that. I mean, you know, locally there's no way that people are out there advocating for people know why somebody's in custody. They can certainly guess, and they can hear stories from these people's families. Oh, he's an angel. I get that. We get it here with our own locals. So, you know, we know we know what they're doing and what ICE's mission is. And, you know, I did find out one interesting thing, which, as we've talked about before, about our medical department and the job that they do. 13% of ICE operational budget is used for medical for people crossing the border, and especially in these caravans and these things that are coming. You know, they're walking for so many miles and they're doing whatever, getting sick, no medical treatment, and the first thing they have to do when they go into custody is care for them medically. And that's not in Mexico, that's in the United States of America. So what cost is that to us? We try and watch every penny we can at a local level. You know, God forbid when you try to watch every penny at a national level, but you know, it's okay to provide all this medical treatment for these people, but you know, it's very frustrating, the information, the false information that's out there. I don't know if that answered your question, but I sure babbled a lot.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Carrico.
No, my knee's fine. Well, first of all, I think we all know that we've been getting a lot of public comments when it comes to immigration during the full board. And as a naturalized citizen, a county board member, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank again Sheriff Downey for taking the time doing I know he's extremely busy, to give me a full tour of the jail and a very detailed explanation of the operation. It was very, very helpful, very educational. I have a very good understanding of how things are being conducted, being done. So it gives me a different point of view when you have people coming and speaking on behalf of some of the other individuals in the county. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you taking the time yourself.
Any other
That's
questions?
open for anybody else too, by the way, anybody that wants to come through.
They may not let me out.
It's a good point.
Any other questions or comments for the sheriff?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Is there any old business to come before the committee? Any old business? Any new business to come before the committee? Mr. Legess. Second by Mr. Carrico. Sorry, Elizabeth. All in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Make sure you got all the reports signed.